Hello and welcome to Newsbreak at 7. I'm Veeraraghav. Our special focus this evening, a deep dive into technical details of a distress sharing formula or the inadequacy of it in the Cauvery water dispute this year, which is a distress year. While after a long legal battle that lasted several years, the Supreme Court categorically settled an allotted share of waters for Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala and Puducherry in 2018. The allocations are for a normal year, or one when monsoon is normal, and the total quantum of water available taken into consideration is 740 TMC feet, and hence each state gets its share. However, in a distress year, the Cauvery Water Disputes Tribunal notes, and I quote, the allocated shares be proportionally reduced amongst the 4 states, or a straightforward prorata sharing formula. This distress sharing formula is the one that's under contention now. This formula, according to Karnataka, needs far more clarity. This year, the Karnataka government says there is more than a 40% deficiency in inflows into water, into the river. And after an all-party meeting, the Karnataka government has said it will seek, quote, a scientific distress sharing formula from the apex court where the case is being heard after Tamil Nadu moved the court. The key issues now are, can a straightforward prorata sharing be followed? What are the key challenges in evolving a distress sharing formula? What does Karnataka mean by a scientific distress sharing formula? And finally, will such a formula ever be agreed upon between the 2 states? Joining us this evening, KV Dhananjay, advocate at the Supreme Court who's followed Karnataka's case very closely. Leela Fernandez, author of Governing Water in India, who studied water issues in India and river water sharing extensively. And T. Ramakrishnan, journalist with The Hindu in Chennai, who's followed the Cauvery dispute very closely for many years. My first question to you, Mr. Dhananjay, can a prorata sharing formula not work out? If not, why?
Well, I think that's the only acceptable basis, because the tribunal was constituted in the year 1990, and then, it went on. Its final order was passed in the year 2007. So, it's too late in the day for Karnataka, though that's the state I come from, for Karnataka to say that, even there's a distress, you will need a different arrangement. All the time that the tribunal took to decide on the dispute, and it actually came out with its final order wherein it said, in a normal year, this will be the allocation between the states. And you just read out the operative portion wherein it said in a distress year, the only acceptable basis for all the states would be to proportionately reduce it. So that's the best the Karnataka can get. And I think that's the only meaningful alternative. I don't think the Karnataka government, has any basis to say that it should be something else. And this is a dispute that has gone on in courts and tribunals for a very long time. So it deserves a closure. Closure means that all parties will have to abide by the order of the tribunal as it was modified by the Supreme Court in the year 2018, and which means politicians in Karnataka and politicians in Tamil Nadu will have to say that the matter has already been settled and resolved, and there will be sharing of distress by all sides concerned. So the Karnataka, unfortunately, is an apparent state, and where more politics happens than in Tamil Nadu. And I think the Karnataka government should not fall a prey to politics, and it should be firm in its message to the people. So long as people are uninformed, so long as people are continuously told that Cauvery belongs to Karnataka, which in fact is not true. Right. Cauvery is a joint property of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu and Kerala and Puducherry. So it is the communication that's a problem, and we just, wait and see what the Supreme Court does. But I don't think the matter is also really there for the Supreme Court to decide, because almost everything stands decided already. I think this is the approach.
Okay, let me take that across to Leela as well. Leela, you've studied water sharing very, very closely. One of the big concerns is that when you say prorata sharing, there is different realities for each year that comes down to it. How do you go about it? And Karnataka is demanding a scientific water sharing, distress sharing formula, which is dynamic and something that evolves differently with each year. What is your point of view on it?
Yeah, I would just build on what the previous guest said. I think what's really important is to depoliticize the issue. I don't have an easy answer in terms of the numbers, but it should really be decided by technical experts. There'll have to be some kind of range or sort of formula agreed on, because with climate change, there will be these intensified, drought years. And the key principle is that all the states really have to share the distress. It's not a situation where one state can say, well, we can't give the water. One state can say we get all the water when there's a distress year. But most importantly, it should be decided by experts, and that the CWMA really should have authority over this so that it does not keep going back to the Supreme Court. Because when the issue goes to the Supreme Court, it really reflects a kind of institutional failure and political failure to resolve the matter on an autonomous basis, especially after all the decades of court cases, as was just pointed out.
Right, important point that you make there. Ramakrishnan, you've studied this very, very closely. From a Tamil Nadu standpoint of view, at the moment, the demand is that you want the entire quantum for September. That's the reason. That's why Tamil Nadu has gone to the Supreme Court at the moment. Will a pro rata sharing work as far as this dispute is concerned in a distress year?
I think Tamil Nadu is also conscious that the catchment of Cauvery in Karnataka and Kerala didn't receive adequate rainfall. So, as a matter of principle, Tamil Nadu would also be agreeable to any distress sharing formula. That is, as a matter of principle. Okay. But there were attempts in the past, sometime in 2002-03, and then the thing emerged. There is, of course, there were series of deliberations among all the stakeholders, but eventually no formula was approved. Okay, and then in 2012 also Karnataka mooted this idea of distress sharing formula. But the point is even if you work out a formula, okay, to implement. There is, of course, the formula has to be implemented by Karnataka because which is a hyper-riparian state. In the sense, okay, and then who is to enforce it? Of course, the WMA is a body that is that's the oversight body which has to enforce the formula. So, in fact, but Karnataka, if you go by the statements of Karnataka ministers or Karnataka representatives, they talk about northeast monsoon also. But the distress northeast monsoon will set in only around the third week of October. So we have still 2 months to go. But the point is, as of now, not much water has flown to Tamil Nadu, and then the farmers want water. At least whatever you can work out a formula. But the point is whether Karnataka will be willing to agree to have that formula.
That's an important point. But the core point, leave that to the political establishment on whether they agree or not. The point here, Ramakrishnan, is will a pro-rata, straightforward pro-rata formula as suggested by the CWDT really work? Or should there be a dynamic model which deals with on a month-on-month basis? Because one of the arguments that's been made in Karnataka is that there has to be a dynamic model which is evolved on a year-on-year basis as far as a distress year is concerned.
You can have, as I told you, there is no, I don't think there will be any problem in agreeing to the idea of having distress sharing formula, whether it is dynamic or static. Anyway, you are going to have a formula based on the data that you have. And then as far as Cauvery is concerned, you have data for more than 100 years. So that it won't be a problem. Yes, whether you have a month-on-month formula that is for a particular period, but the order says in a distress year. Okay, so the distress suffered by whom, number one, and then again it's particularly only in respect of southwest monsoon, because the distress getting shared between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Okay, as far as northeast monsoon is concerned, except in October, some parts of Karnataka, I think, are surrounding Bangalore, they get some rain. Other than that, northeast monsoon doesn't have any relevance for Karnataka. So that's not a big point. The point is between June and September.
All right. So
deficit rainfall.
You're making an important point there. All right, it's an important point that you make there, Leela. As we go forward in a distress year this year, one of the points that's been made is that last year was an abundant surplus year. Record amount of water was in the river and it was released there. What's the lesson that we hear that we take from a larger point of view, that just after a record rainfall year, the next year we end up having a distress year, and in terms of a river sharing dispute? What's the lesson we take and how do we solve it as we go forward?
Yes, I think there are two broad lessons. One is that these cycles of droughts and floods will continue. I mean, even Chennai, if you look at the city of Chennai, had historic floods and then followed by historic drought. And that will intensify likely with climate change. The main lesson is that, both states need to think about water management, and also the central government needs to think about water management before we are in a crisis year. So particularly because there are intensive and increasing needs for water in both Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Agriculture is the primary need in terms of, if you look at the amount of water consumption. But with industrial investment, with urbanization, drinking water needs are getting higher in both cities. And some of the industries are very water intensive. So there needs to really be a focus on water management and water governance in all areas of urban development, rural development, and it should happen before we get to a crisis point. Because once you're in a crisis, as we are right now, the parties go into their corners and there's very little space for communication and sort of long-term planning. So this is so thinking about these kinds of issues is not a luxury. Sometimes we think of long-term issues as a luxury, but it's really a necessity given that we know that these issues will continue to become challenging in the coming years.
Okay. Right, important point that you make there, but we're running completely out of time. Last word to you, Dhananjay. What's your legal advice to both Karnataka and Tamil Nadu? This distress here, remember, we're also heading into an election year, which results often breeding in politics.
Well, both the states have not been able to agree on anything over the last 100 years. So if the idea is going to be that they will sit, around a table and then start debating each year, then this issue is never going to resolve. So what the tribunal suggested, I think, is the only meaningful alternative, because in a given year, it's possible that a neutral observer might say that one state got particularly hit. But the way you look at these problems is you even out. You look at a 10-year period or you look at a 15-year period, you will find that, okay, there is going to be climate change and Karnataka is going to be adversely affected in 1 or 2 years, then it's the same principle that will apply to Tamil Nadu as well. So in the long run, the proportionate sharing, I think, is the one that best serves the interest of all the states. So, and what we require is for politicians to tell the people that, look, this is joint property and we need to honor that.
Right, joint property, we need to honor that. That's what you're saying. Thanks very much, all three of you, for sharing your thoughts on that distress sharing formula. Remember, it's something that will be taken up in the Supreme Court as well tomorrow as the Tamil Nadu's case comes up for hearing. From a distress because of less water in South India, now to continuing heavy rains and landslides in the Himalayas. Another major landslide in Himachal Pradesh's Kulu district destroyed several houses. Multi-story buildings crumbled like a pack of cards, as you can see on your screens, and it was all caught on camera. Remember, we've been witnessing several such landslides in the past few weeks, and there is a fresh alert from the IMD warning of more rain in the state. Emergency response teams of the NDRF and the State Disaster Response Force have been deployed. Hundreds of vehicles are stranded on the Kulu Mandi highway after heavy rainfall, according to reports. A total of 709 roads have been closed, and the state government has estimated damage to public infrastructure of over 8,000 crores. Massive damages there. Three major spells, remember, of heavy rain have hit the state in the last few weeks. Shimla city suffered a huge damage in the last spell. The state government has announced an immediate stop to stone crushing on the banks of all river and rivulets to arrest the alarming impact on the ecosystem. A sudden measure, whether it's enough or not, is a matter of debate. A short while ago, we spoke with the Deputy Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh, Mr. Mukesh Agnihotri. Sir, thank you very much for speaking with us. Give us a sense of the ground situation there. Abhi kya haal hai wahan?
एक तो कल जो है और ये जो अब आनी की घटनाक्रम हुआ है, अब कुल्लू डिस्ट्रिक्ट में घूम के फिर कुल्लू पहुंच गया मसला। फर्स्ट राउंड में भी कुल्लू में बहुत भारी तबाही हुई थी। अब कुल्लू के आनी में जो घटनाक्रम हुआ है, 8 बहुमंजिला बिल्डिंगें जो है ताश के पत्तों की तरह बिखर के भरभरा के नीचे गिर गई हैं, और ये आनी के बस अड्डे के बिल्कुल समीप है। हालांकि हमारे पथ परिवहन निगम की बहुत बसें वहां खड़ी हुई थी, वो सारी बच गई हैं, और इन बिल्डिंग्स को पहले ही खाली करवा लिया गया था, तो कोई कैजुअलिटी नहीं हुई है। और लेकिन ये भारी भरकम स्ट्रक्चर्स थे जो नीचे आए हैं। इसके नीचे 100 के आसपास दुकानें भी थी, लेकिन बचाव हो गया है और सब लोगों को राहत शिविरों में पहुंचा दिया गया है जहां जहां उनके लिए बंदोबस्त किए जा रहे हैं। लेकिन ये भी काफी बड़ा घटना, बहुत बड़ा हादसा ह्यूमन ट्रेजेडी के हिसाब से टल गया।
You've been able to evacuate people out of those buildings in time, sir. Is this because of random construction? That's what is causing the problem there in the hills that we've seen repeatedly.
नहीं, देखिए अभी तक तो हम रिलीफ एंड रेस्टोरेशन के बीच में हैं। अभी जो फोकस है हमारा रिलीफ एंड रेस्टोरेशन पे ही चल रहा है, क्योंकि लगभग 15,000 लोग बेघर हो चुके हैं, जिनके घर उजड़ गए हैं और लोगों को पार्शली डैमेज जो हाउसेज हैं वो अलग हैं। तो इसलिए इस समय हम इस बात पे नहीं जा रहे हैं कि हमें इस बात पे अभी क्या सबक लेना है। अभी तो हमें ये नजर आ रहा है कि ब्यास नदी ने तबाही मचाई है। सबसे ज्यादा जो है कुल्लू मनाली में भी ब्यास है और इधर भी कांगड़ा में भी ब्यास है, हमीरपुर में भी ब्यास नदी है। तो सारा जो नुकसान हुआ है वो ब्यास बेल्ट में हुआ है। तो जैसे कल ही हमने ब्यास नदी के इर्द गिर्द जितने भी 4 जिले, खासतौर पे कुल्लू, मंडी, कांगड़ा और हमीरपुर में सारे क्रशर बैन कर दिए गए हैं। जितने भी भारी भरकम, मैं अभी दौरे पे था फतेहपुर पे और इंदौरा के, जहाँ पे बहुत पौंग डैम की वजह से बहुत ज्यादा नुकसान हुआ, तो वहां पे भी हमने देखा कि भारी भरकम क्रशर काम कर रहे हैं। गगनचुंबी उन्होंने स्टोरेज कर रखी है, गाड़ियां लाद लाद के जा रहे हैं एक एक दिन में। और जो ग्रीड है, जो लस्ट है माफिया की, वो बिल्कुल स्पष्ट नजर आती है। इसलिए पहला एक सख्त कदम उठाते हुए इन चारों जिलों में माइनिंग पूरी तरह बैन कर दी गई है।
सर, एनी न्यू नॉर्म्स, रिकंस्ट्रक्शन में कुछ नए नॉर्म्स ला रहे हैं स्टेट गवर्नमेंट?
नहीं, नेचुरली एक बात तो बड़ा स्पष्ट है कि हिमाचल प्रदेश जो है ये एक टूरिस्ट का अट्रैक्शन का सेंटर है। ये सिर्फ एक राज्य नहीं है, लेकिन देश दुनिया के सैलानी यहाँ पे आते हैं और उस तरीके से बहुत भारी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर टूरिज्म का यहाँ पे बना है, होटल्स बने हैं। और लेकिन अभी जो मेजर हम देखते हैं कि नीति में तो निश्चित तौर पे बहुत बड़ा बदलाव लाने की अब जरूरत महसूस हो रही है, क्योंकि हमने बांध बनाए हैं, उनके बहुत बड़े बड़े रेजर्वेयर्स बने हैं। यहाँ पे बिजली पैदा होती है, पानी आगे की स्टेट्स को मिलता है, कोई राजस्थान को मिल रहा है, कोई हरियाणा को मिल रहा है, कोई पंजाब को मिल रहा है। तो एक तो जो हमारे जो डैम्स बने हैं उनका द्वारा सोचने की जरूरत है। उसके बाद नेशनल हाईवेज जो बने हैं उनके बारे में भी सोचने की जरूरत है कि नेशनल हाईवे भी पूरी तरह नष्ट हो गए हैं। जैसे कुल्लू से मनाली नेशनल हाईवे बिल्कुल नहीं रहा है, मंडी से मनाली तक बहुत बुरा हाल है, शिमला और कालका नेशनल हाईवे बहुत नष्ट हो गया है। तो ये डैम्स हो गए, नेशनल हाईवेज हो गए, नदियों के किनारे जो स्ट्रक्चर्स बने हैं उनका मसला है, या माइनिंग है वो एक मसला है, या जमीन की इस दफा लगातार बारिश होने की वजह से जो सैचुरेशन आई है उसकी वजह से पहाड़ियां ही दरक गई हैं। एक तो होता है कि कोई मकान डैमेज हो जाए, एक है कि पूरा का पूरा पहाड़ ही नीचे आ गया। तो बहुत जगह ऐसी हैं जहां पहाड़ नीचे आ गया और पूरा की पूरी लोकेलिटी ही डैमेज हो गई है।
It's a very difficult situation, sir. Thank you for taking time out to speak to us. All the best for all the efforts that you're making there in terms of containing the situation there. Joining us now is also Nagraj Adve, author and climate change expert, as well as Professor Yashpal Sundrial, both of them who've studied this issue very closely. Mr. Adve, first to you. We have very limited time on the show. Quickly, what do you think has led to this situation, and will we learn our lessons at least after this?
So it's a combination of basically 3 factors: very intense rainfall, which is very likely connected to climate change, a warming ocean, and an El Nino. A second one is basically a very fragile ecological Himalayan ecosystem. And the third is the kind of human interference in that system, which are of different kinds, which include things like road widening, dams, urbanization, etc. Of these 3 factors, only the second is natural. The first, which is intense rainfall and the kind of human interference, is something that is completely, in a sense, human caused. And this is something that is only going to intensify going forward, both in terms of the intensity of rainfall. And it also seems to be the fact that we also need to interrogate deeper. Some of the factors that this official pointed out are correct, like dams and mining and so on. But I'm not sure whether there is a sufficient interrogation of the material interests that underlie this kind of development that has exacerbated the situation in Himachal Pradesh and across Himalaya. And these include things like, for instance, tourism, for instance, urbanization, but also the way in which the car and the development of essentially the ownership of private car transport has expanded and intensified over the last 25 or 30 years. That enables a car driving elite to basically go for short holidays in the Himalayas. So there's a factor of them able to go, they go for shorter times, and it's linked to the spread of a tourism industry, which does provide a lot of employment there. But I think these are the kind of material factors that need to be interrogated deeper, I think, and need to be
important points that you make there, Professor Yashpal. Will we learn our lessons? Because even now the push is for bigger roads, number of people buying property in the hills and building massive houses. Will we learn our lessons? And is this year much worse than any that you've seen before?
Until and unless the government will not make proper policy for the development projects being implemented in the Himalaya, such type of the incident will occur more and more. So until and unless the government of India and the state government will not consider the recommendations of the scientists and technologists, then this problem cannot be solved. And one more thing, this intense rainfall is due to the climate change and global warming. This is very clear. And if you look which picture you are showing of the Himachal Pradesh, they all are the multi-story buildings. We don't have any building code for the Himalayan states. Who will make it? Nobody is going to see whether a person is constructing his house or his building or hotel or lodge according to the building code. Because we don't have any building code, and entire Himalaya, not only climatically, but tectonically is also highly sensitive. It falls under
important point
zone
that
4 and 5.
Yes. Important points that both of you raised there. Thank you very much for raising these points. As we see those pictures, hopefully we will learn some lessons. Both of you have detailed issues that we need to learn and evolve in the hill stations and in that ecosystem. Thank you too for joining us. Obviously those images bring about a disturbing reality of the present at the moment in the Himalayas. There a Himalayan issue there that needs to be addressed. That's all we have time for on this show. But of course, the news continues here on NDTV.